What's up, everyone? This is Dariusz Kalbarczyk, co-founder of MG Poland, JS Poland, AngularMaster.dev and WorkshopFest.dev. Welcome back to Angular Master Podcast. Today, we've got a special guest from London, UK. MC, speaker, trainer, community leader, ladies and gentlemen, Gerard Sans.
Hello everyone.
Hi Gerard. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little bit cold. I don't know if you have noticed my my hat.
Yeah.
I'm quite warm now.
Okay.
You can also see my jumper. I mean, this is in the middle of winter here in the UK.
Is it winter in UK now? No.
Well, not officially, but
Okay.
I mean, the temperature is quite cold.
Okay. It's like a 10 degrees?
Yes, totally.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on the day, but you know, it can be like gray, cloudy, and cold.
Gerard, because you are MC, we have to announce something. Can you do it?
Yes, sure. What is it?
Yeah. So regarding your MC, and we have NG Poland and JS Poland very soon. What happened?
Well, what happened? I think you just invited me to be the MC, and
Exactly.
I agreed. That was it, more or less.
More or less, yes. So thank you so much, and yeah, I'm looking forward for this. So it's just a great news and great announcement.
I'm excited too, because that means that I will be there, which, you know, it's always nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, meeting in person is.
Yeah, totally. I've been missing that. I guess together with everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a great community and great people in this community. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so let's talk about some technical stuff now. And
sure, let's go for it.
Yeah. So what is GraphQL? Do we really need it?
Oh wow! So you you start strong.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, this is a good question. And when you are trying to introduce a technology that maybe, you know, some of the people haven't used yet, I think is a fair question. I mean, do I need it? Do I need this technology at all? I mean, why should I look into it? And I guess because I'm kind of a evangelist in GraphQL, and I've been since the early days, like back in 2016. It's now been few years, and I think compared to the beginning, or at least from the release of GraphQL as a new technology, there has been a lot of exciting developments. And I would say that, as with any other technology, you want to make sure that it's a good fit for your project. So one thing I would say is look into your project, see what are the requirements for it, and then look into GraphQL. If you think that that's a good match, then I will explore it. I would do like a proof of concept, maybe spend 1 or 2 days building, you know, an easy enough application. Try some of the features that your project is going to use, and then make a decision. But I would say that it's very interesting technology that you should at least be aware of what you can do with it. And of course, if you decide to use it, then yeah, hope you the best. I mean, of course, there's so many variables that it's difficult to answer, you know, in this kind of a generic context. But I would say that totally give it a look, and maybe try it in a small project.
So if I try it, if I like it, so how to start with GraphQL?
Well, today there's so many good resources for that. you can probably start in the GraphQL.org website. I mean, there's other resources. There's another website that is how to GraphQL. I mean, it's easy enough to memorize how to GraphQL. And it starts with, all the basics, and it gives you also a playground so you can test and run some queries right there in the website. So I think probably that's where I would start if you are just wondering like, okay, how this GraphQL technology looks like.
Okay, so what are the most common mistake made at the beginning?
Well, usually I think that the most difficult task for someone that is starting is usually making sense of that is a new technology and is not, REST. And of course, we cannot talk about GraphQL without talking about REST APIs. And because we have been using REST APIs for so long, we have, some ideas, preconceived ideas about how dealing with endpoints and APIs and how they should work. So it will take a little bit of time to get the idea of this query language that you can use, and then you can run your queries on top of a GraphQL schema. And these are few concepts that probably it will take some time for you to familiarize.
Okay, so what to pay a special attention in new projects?
So when you're starting a new project using a new technology like GraphQL, I would say that most people look into it as a migration. So they actually have already a REST API and they want to migrate, but they don't want to switch, do a big bang migration, which would be disable the REST API and move all the APIs into GraphQL. That's probably not what I would recommend. But if you are going to use GraphQL in a new project, then it's a little bit easier because there's no migration involved. But you will have to translate, if you have developers that they are familiar with REST, you will have to teach them how to build a GraphQL schema and transform how they would build a REST API into how they will build a GraphQL server.
So
for the same purpose.
Okay.
So they should pay special attention to those initial steps. So they build the same quality endpoint that they would build usually with a REST endpoint, but now with a GraphQL endpoint.
Okay. So when is a good idea to use GraphQL versus REST?
Well, the thing is, this is not as easy. I mean, I could go ahead and say use GraphQL in any case. I mean, that's also an approach. Like go crazy and say like just use GraphQL in every occasion. But the reality is that it's not that easy. And usually when you are in a real work environment, there's a lot of dependencies and there's a lot of teams involved, and they may have to do or buy into the idea of replacing the REST APIs using a new technology. So you may be restricted on how much you can do, and maybe some of the things you need to do, you will need to get some other teams in board with your thinking. So one thing that I can tell you is that GraphQL is an evolution of REST. It doesn't necessarily replace REST because there's still some use cases where REST it's definitely better. And this is because REST is more mature and has been around longer. So you will find more products developed on top of it. The thing is, GraphQL, being an evolution of REST, it also offers new features and capabilities that REST is not able to offer. And some of these capabilities are, for example, automation. And GraphQL is able to auto-document the APIs, which is some issue that the REST API have solved in the past by using third-party tools. But knowing that GraphQL has that feature built in, it's one of the benefits. There are other benefits from GraphQL that are not in REST, at least not built on its design. So that will make GraphQL in most of the scenarios better. But then it just depends on how much knowledge you have invested on GraphQL. So your teams with this new technology.
Okay.
Maybe I answered too long.
No, it's not too long. It's well said. Thank you so much. So, how to validate queries in GraphQL? I think it's one of the most
so this is a good follow-up.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you are building using REST API, one of the main issues is that the implementation may change. And if you have been working in a project, you know that some of the endpoints are usually handled by the backend team. And the backend team most of the times are not in good communication or terms with the front-end team. Sometimes they are the same people, sometimes they are different teams. But one of the main issues historically is that somebody in the backend decides to change how the endpoint behaves, and the front-end people is the last people to know. So what will happen is you will run your clients, and there will be some parameter that maybe has changed its name. Maybe the JSON response has changed slightly, and you will only realize after you go through testing. One thing that happens when you are using GraphQL is that that's not even possible. Every time that you run a query, GraphQL on its own will only allow you to use queries that are valid. And that is similar to what TypeScript does for JavaScript. You cannot compile, you cannot build a code. If you are building an application using TypeScript, it won't compile. The linter won't allow you to even, go through the development. This is exactly the same in GraphQL. When you are building a GraphQL API, the thing that you will need first is to build what is called a GraphQL schema. And the GraphQL schema gives you all of the information about the types and also the relationships between the types. So you cannot build a query that won't work. And in any case, if the backend GraphQL schema changes, it won't allow you to build, which is very important because you don't want to realize that there's some error later on in runtime. So the moment you build your client, it will complain and it will tell you exactly what's failing in your query, which is, it's a big enhancement compared to, for example, REST, which you always need to execute the query to get the result or to get an error. With GraphQL, you are in your code editor, and while you are coding, the code fetching the data or interacting with the GraphQL endpoint, it will give you feedback right there, which is something that maybe you didn't know it's available today.
Okay. It's a good idea to use GraphQL for mobile applications.
Well, actually, that's an excellent question. Actually, GraphQL was specifically designed for mobile.
Okay.
And it's funny because this information somehow has been lost. I don't know why, but the main focus when Facebook because GraphQL is a technology that comes from Facebook in 2015. What happens is that they design GraphQL exactly for their mobile app. So the first time that Facebook releases Facebook as a mobile app, this is when they create this technology. So actually, it's specifically made to be very performant and to be used with mobile apps. Yeah. Later on, we can see how GraphQL is also useful for web apps, but it was originally designed for mobile, which is a very good fit. So if you are building mobile apps, GraphQL is exactly what you need.
Okay, what is schema?
So the schema is at the central point of GraphQL, and in any case, either if you are creating a new GraphQL server or you want to use or query information from a GraphQL endpoint, the schema is at the center. And as I explained a little bit before, it defines the types and also the fields and the relationship within those types, so the clients can query the server in the way that they need.
So next question is about query. So what is query then?
So this is a concept that GraphQL introduces, and is because we have this GraphQL schema. A query is a way for you to gather, to fetch information out of it. And this is one of the main benefits of GraphQL as a technology, because it gives all the power of creating the responses from the API. And this is made when you do the query. So actually, the clients and the developers, they can decide what fields and what relations are being included within a query. And this is very important because sometimes you ask, for example, the information for a user, but then you want to deeper into that entity or that type. And in a normal REST API endpoint, you will have to wait until you get the response to do more queries. So for example, I will do a query to get the user profile information. And then I will get, I don't know, I want to get the friends of that user. Then I will need the information coming from that initial API and do the subsequent queries. That's one way. Another way is to ask the backend team to create a new API that will give me both the information for the user and the friends. But as you can see, this becomes, a hassle, because every time a developer needs, more information or bring more data into a client, into a screen, for example, then this developer needs to talk to the backend team and then ask them to build this endpoint. And if they are busy, or maybe there's no backend team anymore because the backend was built, months ago, that will mean that the developer building the client will have to do that, mashup of information on the client, which is the worst place because it's very expensive.
Okay, so what is mutation?
So with GraphQL, mutations are the way you change the schema. So the queries were the way to fetch information from a GraphQL server. A mutation is a way to change that GraphQL server. And this is a specific query. It's still a query. So you're using a query language to do that. And then you tell the GraphQL server what information you want to change. So that will be, part of the cycle of, your application. So if you want to build a CRUD application, that will be part of your queries.
So what is a subscription then?
Well, we cover how to fetch data and how to mutate the backend, but the subscription is some interesting concept which allows you to receive notifications. Whenever there's a change in your GraphQL schema, you can subscribe to a specific mutations, so you can listen to create, update, and delete events and get a notification. And the power of subscriptions is that the client can specify what information goes into those notifications. So you are always in control and you don't waste, bandwidth. So that's going back to the original idea that this is made and designed for mobile applications. So actually, if you are in a very tiny, very restricted, in features, a client like an old mobile phone, you can actually define a much smaller query. So you are making a better use of the bandwidth.
Can you repeat?
And if you are if you imagine you are using a web client, so in that context, I can ask for all of the information, maybe more information. I can show images, I can show my friends, I can show the pictures of my friends. But if I'm in a mobile application, which is exactly the same, it's just a different client. Now, because I'm in a more restricted client, I can code that same screen knowing that it's a phone. And then I can decide, I don't want the images of my friends. I will just get the name. So in that UI, you won't see the images, because I'm guessing that client will be on their phone and they don't need as much information to go through the bandwidth. So I can save some bandwidth to just show the name of the friends and not, the full profile information.
Stuff, yeah. Okay. So
is that clear enough? I mean, it's a little bit abstract.
No, it's really clear. Yeah, it's really clear. And the next question is, what are resolvers?
Okay, so this is a little bit going more into detail, and we are now moving.
We like it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So we are moving into the server side, and GraphQL works both on the client, in the query language form. But when we move into the server side, we are now moving into a execution environment. So of course, the query that you built in your client goes into the server, and now the server needs to fulfill, the query, being a query or a mutation. So the server needs to parse that query and then execute it on the server side. So maybe as a web developer, you are not so much familiar with what happens on the server side, but this is a little bit more detail into what happens after you run a query in your client. So that query will travel to the server, and then on the server, following the GraphQL schema definition, it will execute what is called a resolver in order to create the JSON that will be sent back to the client. So you can imagine a call tree of resolvers. So that query will be transformed into a query, a query tree of calls to resolvers. And these resolvers will be either behind a type that it's defined on the GraphQL schema, or behind a field, which will be any of the properties in a specific type. So then you can codify these resolvers, so you can decide if you want to go to the database, collect the data, and there's some arguments that you can use to figure it out, what information was required from the client. And the funny thing is that most of it is just kind of a skeleton. GraphQL doesn't tell you what to do in your resolver. It's just a JavaScript function, and you can actually implement it in any way you want. You can use any, database. You could use memory. Most of the examples that you see online are just, node examples. You can use some object in memory to implement like a quick and dirty GraphQL server. You can use RMs. You can use other technologies. You don't need to use JavaScript. You can use Python or any other technologies that you use in your company, and then use that and just get the final result that you will send to the client. So you can mix and match these resolvers that can maybe access disk, access a database, access, a REST API, even if you want. And then once you gather all of the information by executing these tree of resolvers, you will then get a JSON back to the client. So it's actually very flexible in the implementation side. Most people think that GraphQL will force you into sub technology in the backend, but actually it's only a function. You can use anything on the backend to gather the information. You could use SMS, a text message that is waiting for a reply, and then use that and send it back with a JSON. So it's very, very flexible in that sense.
That's amazing. That's really, really cool. So, most important question now. Are there any good GraphQL tools for Angular developers?
Yeah. There has been a lot of interest, mostly in the, because we are talking of Facebook technology. There's a lot of interest in the React community, but actually in the Angular community, there's also have been following with interest. And there's a library which is Apollo Angular. And this goes back to the effort that Apollo has done within the GraphQL community to build tools and libraries around GraphQL. And this is more a community effort, which is backed up by Apollo. But there's other companies like the Guild that they have contributed with different micro libraries and tools. And in Angular, there's actually support for this Apollo Angular client, which is supporting up to the latest version of Apollo client, which is version 3. So all of the things that you can build using Apollo, you can use it within Angular, or you can use also maybe a JavaScript client. There's other options that are, vanilla JavaScript base. But if you are using Angular, you can use Apollo Angular for that.
Perfect. So how to implement GraphQL in Angular?
Well, there's Apollo Angular. You can use that, and it matches perfectly with Angular. It will be using RxJS behind the scenes, and then there are different architectures that you can use. But usually, you will match a component in Angular with a query, and that could be when I'm mentioning a query, it could be a query or a mutation. And there's also support for subscription, so you can also implement real time. I would say that there's nothing missing in the Angular side of things to take full advantage of GraphQL.
Can you tell me about the future of GraphQL in general?
Well, the future has changed, and it was very promising, when it was released, and it was a little bit not so much clear where GraphQL would, be. That was maybe in, around 2016. I mean, the release was 2015, and now we are in 2021. It's in technology years. This is now a mature technology that it's been used by Facebook, but now there are other companies that are using it. Probably close to developers is GitHub. Recently, we have learned that they have replaced all of the classic API, REST API endpoints with GraphQL implementations. So even if you are using a REST API to access GitHub, behind the scenes, there's a GraphQL server that is providing the data for those APIs. So a lot of people have implemented their businesses using only GraphQL, and there are many examples today, like Twitter, Airbnb, big corporations like
big
AWS are using it for years now. So it's a consolidated technology. It's just a shame that not many Angular developers are taking advantage of it, because it's just another technology.
So what are the limitations of GraphQL?
Of course, there are limitations, and the limitations for GraphQL come from the years that has been around, and these limitations are going away as more people is using it on a day-to-day basis. And I would say that there's no many limitations at this point. There was historically, there were some limitations, for example, in tracking performance, in catching solutions available, and all of these have been removed. So now there are commercial solutions. There's solutions from Apollo. There's also now GraphQL Federation available. There's a lot of things that will support your implementation in the long term, so you won't have to worry much on finding kind of the places where there's a gap or nobody has found themselves yet there with something that they don't know how to implement with GraphQL. So I would say that now it's quite safe. It's not, it's not something that it's in research, or it's an early adopter kind of a scenario. It's a mature technology. Anything that you can imagine, it's been solved, and it's not as mature as REST. So you may find still some edges, some implementation details that maybe you have to implement yourself. But I would say that it's very rare these days.
Okay, that's perfect. It was the last technical questions.
Sure.
Question. I have a few more non-technical. It is our tradition in this podcast. Yeah. So,
okay.
What kind of person is Gerard? How do you see yourself? This is the hardest.
What kind of person?
Yes, exactly.
You mean like
how do you see yourself?
I think as a person, I'm very open-minded. I'm very independent, and I like to be open to new ideas. So I don't know. I'm not close to anything. So I'm happy to listen, and I'm happy to change my mind. So that would be probably the kind of person that I want to be. I don't want to be like close-minded, or like some people can be sometimes. And I don't know, kind of person. I try to be funny. I don't like to be serious all the time.
Too serious.
I like to mix.
Why so serious?
Yeah, I mean, you can always be serious, no? But who wants to be serious all the time? I mean, that's exactly. A little bit too extreme. But yeah, that's more or less. I've been lately doing a lot of fitness, and like I changed kind of my lifestyle. but this is, I guess, for everyone in the last year or so because of the lockdowns and COVID. But yeah, this is more or less how I see myself.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know it's a hard question, but,
Yeah.
but I love this question. Do you have some hints for us regarding self-organization?
Oh, self-organization. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say that you mean like to be efficient or to be more
Productive or
more productive.
yeah.
I would say that in my experience, this can mean different things to different people. So I would say be open to try different approaches, and then you will see if something works when you feel better and you feel like you're achieving more and you feel happy. So as long as you are happy, it could be anything. I mean, I don't mind too much how much you do. If you do a lot but you are not happy, then something is wrong. So it's a balance. You need to
Yeah.
find a balance for your happiness. But I'm not able to tell what is that for you. I mean, you need to try to figure it out. And I guess you need to try different approaches. And if you find something that works, then you stay with that. But also be open to try other things. I mean, there's so many things that you can try. But if you feel happy, I think that's a good indicator that you are doing well. I think in our industry, there's always the risk of how it's called,
Burning
when
out.
no, when you are burned out, I think it's called. So you don't want to be burned out. Our job is very cerebral, so you want to have like a clear mind. You don't want to be, crazy in your head or
Yeah.
tired. So you want to be calm. You want to be with energy. So you need to, take care of your sleep patterns, what you eat. You feel energetic. It's not that easy. I mean, it's kind of a loaded question, but I would say that try different things, and then I think a good indicator is happiness. If you are happy, then I think it's working. If you are not happy, if you are stressed, if you feel burnout, then look into ways of maybe taking less work, or taking responsibilities out, because maybe you are trying to do too much. So yeah, that's
So
my
how you understand a work-life balance?
well, it's complex because I think it's more like, that those people that they take, the sticks, and they try to put the plates on the sticks. So as long as you can manage, it changes. It depends, because maybe you can deal with one thing well, or maybe you can deal with 2, 3 things well. I mean, it depends on you. So you take one responsibility. If you are good, maybe you take a second responsibility. If you are good, maybe you want to take a third responsibility, or maybe you are stressed, you want to take one out. So it may change. Maybe when you are younger, you can do more. When you are older, you can do less. So a good advice would be adjust. So you are not, I mean, you will feel something when you are doing too much. You will be stressed. You will be sleeping badly. You will get overweight. I mean, there's some red flags. So, and as long as there are not any red flags, I think I would say it's okay.
Yeah. Well said. So, do you have any favorite for hobbies?
Oh yeah. I mean, lately I've been doing a lot of fitness. So I like running. I like swimming. Something that gets you active. And I don't like to be always in the same place. So it also gives you like some routine to go out and take your mind off things.
I saw some photos of you and Todmoto swimming together, but it was not normal swimming in a swimming pool. It was like I don't know. Can you explain it a little bit more?
Oh, this is so this year, not this year, but last year, because of the lockdown and all the restrictions, you could not do many things. But one thing that you could do is go into an open space. I mean, of course, if it's not a closed space, it was allowed. And then you could, so we tried as an experiment, we tried to go swimming in a lake when it was allowed. I mean, it was also a short time that it was allowed. And it was a new activity. And after a few months of running, or you get fit enough to do this kind of thing, because of course you don't want to go into the middle of a lake if you are not fit enough. I wouldn't recommend that. So you need to get fit a little bit, so you get more endurance and you get more stamina. And then of course you can try things like this. I mean, you are in the middle of the nature. You need to be well equipped. When we tried this, it was in the middle of winter, so we got like a special equipment, and I don't know. I think it's nice to try something different, and that was also the few things that you could do in the middle of a lockdown. So that's also why we tried this. I guess it's boredom. You don't want to be like all the time at home.
Swimming
so this was an excuse.
Swimming in winter sounds a little bit crazy.
Well, it is a bit crazy. So you can imagine we were a little bit desperate to get out of home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it sounds.
In normal conditions, I wouldn't do it. I would prefer to be, in a beach, in a sunny beach in Spain. But yeah, if you are in England, then you go to a lake.
Yeah, exactly. It's not sunny beach. Last question. How do you remember your last visit to Poland?
It was fantastic. My last visit to Poland, I was surprised, and I was, greatly surprised, because you never know. I mean, when you travel, it was also one of my first visits to Poland, and I was a little bit, scared. I mean, you never know. I mean, I'm from Spain, so I'm used to Spanish ways, but the countries on the east are a little bit different. So I wasn't sure what I was going to find, and I was greatly surprised when I saw that actually it could be better than Spain. And I found like little places. I love to go to coffee places, so I went to a couple of them, and they serve like really good food, and everything was modern. I mean, I was like, wow. I mean, Poland is not what I thought. This is actually very good. And I saw a lot of technology companies, and I was surprised. Actually, I recommend anyone to go to Poland for the food, but I guess for technology as well. There's a lot of innovation going on, and I was like, wow, the community, the tech community is also quite big in there.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for this nice word. Yeah, it's
sure.
Okay, so Gerard, thank you so much for this podcast.
Sure, no worries.
You deliver a lot of great knowledge, so it's always I'm always happy to talk to you. It's always fun, and it's amazing. So one more time, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out, and I mean it will be my total pleasure to join for another event. And I know you have been working hard to to make a good event. We are going back to in person, so I'm sure it will be smashing, and I wouldn't like to miss it, not for anything. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.